Good morning. Welcome back to Deb's True Crime Notebook. It's Friday, the day after Halloween, November 1st, and this is the 13th day in the Richard Allen trial. We're going to start by updating you on some information from yesterday that was not shared yesterday. And there were a couple witnesses that had a brief appearance on the stand, so we want to update you with that. And then we'll get right into what we know about the defense's first day in the morning in the Richard Allen trial. Master Trooper Brian Harshman, a seasoned veteran with 30 years of service in the Indiana State Police, was the first witness called to the stand on Thursday. He stated that he became involved in the Delphi investigation in April 2020, a little over 3 years after the tragic murders. Harshman explained to the court that he took on the role of, quote, the phone guy, which involved monitoring Richard Allen's communication from within custody to the outside world. He detailed how he oversaw calls, video chats, and texts, noting that he has listened to and re-listened to approximately 700 hours of Allen's calls. During his testimony, the trooper expressed his strong belief that the voice in the bridge guy video is definitely Richard Allen's. He further testified that Allen frequently communicated with either his wife or mother, making what he described as incriminating statements. The prosecution began by playing several recordings of phone calls between Allen and his wife, Kathy, including outgoing calls made April 3rd, 2023. Richard, I did it. I killed Abby and Libby. Kathy, no, you didn't. No, you didn't, dear. Don't say that. You weren't feeling well. They messed up your meds. Kathy, why would you say that? Richard, maybe I did it. Kathy, they're messing with your mind. Something is not right. Don't ever say you did it. I know you didn't. Richard, I think I did. Kathy, they're trying to manipulate you into saying things. Richard Allen subsequently asked his wife to apologize to the families of the girls, to which she responded, just don't say anything more. Throughout many of the calls, both his wife and mother Janice reassured him that he did not kill the girls, also suggesting he was mentally ill. At times, they urged him not to discuss the crimes over the phone. Allen frequently expressed in the conversations that he felt he was losing his sanity while in Westville. The prosecution concluded its case just before 5 p.m., and the defense called its first two witnesses. The first was Cheyenne Mill, who, along with her best friend, was hiking the Monon High Bridge trails on February 13, 2017. Crossing the bridge around 2:50 that afternoon. She stated that she never observed anything unusual in the woods that day, but did recall passing an overweight man on the bridge. She mentioned taking a few snapshots or Snapchat photos during the outing and later informed the police of her location, adding that she never saw Richard Allen. The second and final witness to testify on Thursday was Teresa Liebert, a resident near the bridge who noted seeing someone suspicious near mailboxes close to her home. She stated that she reported this to the police. By the end of the day, the defense indicated they were determining how to proceed with calling additional witnesses while awaiting Special Judge Francis Gull's decision on several key motions. Judge Gull ruled that the jurors would be permitted to hear about Allen's Google search history, but denied a request to show the jury photographs of Allen prior to the arrest. At 9:01 a.m. this morning, the jury entered the courtroom and court resumed. Judge Gull informs defense attorney Brad Rosie that they will discuss the motions he filed regarding transports during the lunch break. Gull also mentions that the jury has again had supervised access to their electronic devices. The defense calls Christopher Guti to the stand, prompting the state to immediately request a sidebar which lasts for 9 minutes. Guti introduces himself as a police officer from Hammond, Indiana, with a background as an EMT. He shares that he received training in interviewing both witnesses and suspects. Defense attorney Jennifer Auger questions him about the significance of accurately documenting interviews. Guti explains that he was part of an FBI gang response task force known as GRIT, G-R-I-T, which focused on kidnappings. Guti informs the jury that GRIT played a role in the Delphi investigation by canvassing neighborhoods and conducting interviews. He mentions that he dedicated a week to the investigation. During this time, Guti indicates he had a conversation with Brad Weber. Auger inquires about Weber's account of where he went after work February 13, 2017. Auger then asks Guti to explain what an FBI 302 is, to which Guti responds that it is a report based on an interview. Auger presents an exhibit, which is an FBI 302 report from his interview with Weber. At 9:27 a.m., the defense calls Dr. Deanna Dwinger to the stand. Dwinger informs the jury that she oversees the Department of Behavioral Health at Indiana Department of Corrections, IDOC, and has held the position since 2021. She explains that her primary responsibility is to manage the IDOC contract, with contractor responsible for hiring the behavioral staff. Dwinger mentions that she is generally familiar with Richard Allen confirming his transfer from the Westville Correctional Facility. She describes the solitary units at both Westville and the Wabash Valley Correctional Facility as being quite similar. While she has not personally met Allen and did not make the decision regarding his transfer, she is aware of who did. Dwinger adds that Monica Walla, that is Dr. Monica Walla, the psychologist assigned to Allen, expressed to her a special interest in this case shortly after her assignment. She notes that Walla mentioned listening to Delphi podcast and recommended them to her in early 2023. Reported note, Allen was transferred to Westville at the end of 2022. Dwinger states that she was aware Walla had been to the Monon High Bridge, but this occurred prior to being assigned to Allen. She expresses to the jury that she found it unusual for someone to visit the crime scene of a colleague, but mentions that Walla discussed the matter in greater detail with her direct supervisor. The state requests a sidebar regarding the terminology crime scene. Dwinger informs the jury that she is acquainted with Dr. Martin, noting that he's a psychiatrist who prescribes medications. She adds that Dr. Martin is no longer employed at the IDOC. She states that Allen underwent an assessment in Indianapolis and received a D code regarding his mental health. This D code indicates that an individual would benefit from a tailored therapy treatment plan. Dwinger informs the jury that she is unaware if there have been safekeeping at either Westville or Wabash Valley and is uncertain about the reasons for his assignment there. She acknowledges that there were cameras in his cell, which caused her concern. Although she recommended the removal of the video surveillance, her suggestion was not implemented. Dwinger explains to the jury that solitary confinement can affect mental health, and it is reasonable to believe that prolonged isolation would have detrimental effects over time. She states that solitary confinement for 30 days or more occurs only when an inmate is severely mentally ill. She informs the jury that this 30-day guideline is in place to prevent individuals from being isolated for extended periods. Dwinger tells the jury that Allen was gravely disabled. She clarifies the distinction between mental health monitoring and mental health treatment, noting that treatment centers more on actual therapeutic practices. She adds that the therapeutic environment at Westville was not ideal. Dwinger confirms that she was part of a team that discussed Allen's care, although she was not directly involved in his treatment. She describes her role as a sounding board for those who were responsible for his care. The state requests another sidebar after Rosie inquires about solitary confinement for mentally ill patients with Dwinger. Then at 9:56 a.m., Rosie concludes his questioning, and prosecution attorney Stacy Diener begins her cross-examination of Dwinger. Dwinger affirms that Allen was not severely mentally ill and that he began to decompensate only after his arrival at Westville Correctional Unit. She mentions that she was first approached about Allen in April 2023, which was when his core team was established. The initial contact she recounts was from Dr. Walla, who asked if Allen could have a meeting with his wife. Dwinger informs the jury that at the time, Walla indicated to her that Allen was faking his condition. Dwinger informs the jury that the team was referred to as MDT, or Multidisciplinary Team. She clarifies that being gravely ill indicates a person's inability to care for themselves. She states that the situation reached a point where it no longer mattered if he was faking it and intervention was necessary. Dwinger describes Haldol injections to the jury, noting that they are effective in managing symptoms of psychosis, with gravely ill being one such symptom. Rosie raises an objection, claiming it was a leading question. At 10:04 a.m., Diener concludes her cross-examination and Rosie commences his redirect. Diener requests a sidebar and judge appeared frustrated. The state raised another objection after Rosie poses an additional question. Both sides conclude and the jury begins to ask their questions. Question number 1. Does the DOC ever place safekeepers in the general population? Dwinger confirms that they do. Question 2. Is it possible that Allen was pretending to avoid being moved to general population? Dwinger acknowledges that this is a possibility, but cannot speak for Allen. Question 3. Did you personally hear threats made against Allen from other inmates? Dwinger replies no. Question 4. Is it possible for someone to unintentionally reveal the truth in a fabricated confession? Dwinger believes it's difficult to determine, but the answer is yes. She explains that one can identify faking by observing the organizations of thoughts, especially if the conversation follows a goal-oriented and chronological structure. Additionally, she confirms that Allen was not experiencing delirium. Question 5. What is the usual procedure for safekeepers managing individuals with severe mental illness? According to Dwinger, it is the same as the general approach. Question 6. What is the primary responsibility of a safekeeper working with an inmate who has severe mental illness? Dwinger states that it remains consistent with general guidelines. At 10:40, court resumes, followed by an immediate sidebar before the jury enters. At 10:46, the defense calls Max Baker, an intern working for the defense, a graduate of IU. He's been involved with the case since November 2022. He informs the jury that he heard Harshman's testimony. At this moment, reporter notes that Allen's wife, Kathy, exits the courtroom with 3 others. Baker testifies that he has reviewed a majority of Allen's phone calls and videos from Westville. He states that he was tasked with compiling video footage of Allen at Westville and transferring it into a flash drive. Throughout his testimony, the prosecution repeatedly raises objections. Baker states that the video was provided to the prosecution during the discovery process. He explains that there are 2 primary video formats, camcorder video and security camera video. The camcorder video captures footage outside of Allen's cell, while the security video focuses on the interior of the cell. Notably, the camcorder video includes sound, whereas the security footage does not. Baker informs the jury that the camcorder video lacked a timestamp and was organized into folders with general timeline details. He mentions that he made an effort to piece the information together as accurately as possible. He clarifies that in-cell video stored on the flash drive is recorded on the 15th of each month from November 2022 to December 2023, except for the period of April to July 2023, during which additional videos are included beyond the 15th. The defense requests the admission of the video and presents spreadsheets detailing the videos by date and time of recording. The prosecution raises an objection, leading to another sidebar discussion. At 11:31 a.m., the court resumes its session. Defense intern Max Baker returns to the stand, and the defense quickly requests a sidebar. This sidebar lasts for 10 minutes before the jury re-enters the courtroom. Baker informs the jury that there is a problem with the security and camcorder videos of Allen, as the prosecution provided them to the defense without the necessary timestamps. Rosie responds, stating, "We are working with what the state has given us." Judge Gull then announces that the jury will take a lunch break until 1 p.m., and the court goes into recess at 11:52 a.m. And that's what we know about this morning's session, day 13 of the Richard Allen trial. I found it very interesting that there were so many questions from the jury this morning. Ordinarily, there's maybe 1 or 2, but there were 6, I believe, And some of them were very, very interesting. And in one case particularly, I believe that it kind of is a telltale sign of what that particular juror may be thinking. So you might want to go back and listen to this video again or rewind it to the point where I discuss the questions and see what you think, and let me know what you think in the comments. We'll see you next time on Deb's True Crime Notebook. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all those things for me. We'll be back this afternoon with a wrap-up of today, the first full day of defense presenting their case in the Richard Allen trial.